Hello, 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 everybody. We're back live. Thank you for joining us live. I had some information to share and I felt it was the perfect forum to do it. Real quick, it won't take that long. If you've been following the situation with Terra, you know it's a big cluster. You know it's all jacked up. You realize that it's not getting any better. It's actually getting worse. I want to explain why it seems like it's getting worse and what's really going on, because I think there's a little bit more to this than people think. So I'll try to break this down. And by the way, YouTube's yelling again. So hopefully you're hearing me loud and clear. I'll check it after the fact. And worst case, I will upload the video to the static area after the fact. But it seems to be going, but it's just giving me warnings. So I don't know what to expect. But this whole business with Terra Luna, if you don't know, let me just reiterate real quick in a couple sentences. The proposal's out there to basically have a fork. And you would end up with Terra Classic, which would result in a different coin, Luna Classic. And anybody who bought in off the dip when this all happened basically would get screwed over. You would end up with a vesting, and a lot of the money would be taken from you and arguably given to anybody who was holding before the fiasco. Now, if you're of that vein where you want to make the existing holders whole again, then it's probably not a big deal. But if you're one of those that felt like you were going to profit off this dip, you're pretty pissed off right now, and rightfully so. So that proposal's out there. It's what I have up on the screen here is the current state snapshot of where it is. If you want to look at these proposals yourself, you are free to. The website you want to go to is station.terra.money. And when you go there, you will see the proposal that I've got here on the screen is the only proposal that is visible to people that go to the site. Now, the problem is that there is another proposal out there. That proposal is what the vast majority of non-wealthy people want, which is a burn. And the burn that they came up with, they actually, when I say they, the devs, went to the extreme of hiding this from everybody to be able to vote on it. So all you can see is the fork. You cannot see the burn proposal. And the way that they did this, they did it so secretly. They didn't announce that they were going to hide it. And it took somebody on the forum to identify, hey, where's this one here? This one you cannot see through the regular station.terra.money. It's a dedicated link that somebody shared. If you want that link, find me on Twitter, and I've shared it out through my profile at CTR Crypto Radio. And you can get to this link, which is this proposal. And then if you like, share it out to anybody else who you want to support the burn. It will let you support the burn. Now, here's why I wanted to do a live on this, because there was some stuff I learned that people didn't know. In order to vote, you have to actually stake your coins into this interface. It's not as simple as just having them in your wallet. You have to stake them. This wasn't clear, I don't think, to everybody that's there, that you have to actually stake your coins to be able to participate in the vote. So when the initial one, the fork one, the one people don't want, launched, and it initially had 11 million tokens, or in this case, votes, they were actually 11 million tokens backing it. And they were wondering how it happened so fast. It's because somebody already had 11 million tokens staked. Now, I want you to consider something here. They're not counting the votes, as far as I can tell, from anyone who bought after the fiasco. That means that whoever that was with the 11 million tokens was one of the whales. So what I said on Twitter, again, we're at CTR Crypto Radio if you want to find us. To get to the link, what I said was, the governance is already rigged against the layman investor because whales, Do Kwon, Citadel, BlackRock, anybody who's a large holder of the token who had staked their tokens are going to influence this outcome. And there's nothing you can do about it. The validators hold a significant share of the voting rights, and they include veto capabilities. So I'm going to flip back over, and I know it's hard to read. It's not really important to read it per se, because you can always go to the link for this one, for the fork, at station.terra.money if you want to go look at this. But if you look, the graph is getting close to the quorum. The quorum simply means this is when we're going to make this thing happen. The only way that does not go forward is that there are enough vetoes or enough no's to offset it getting to the quorum in enough positive. And I believe the threshold is 40% or 50%. So in other words, if enough of the validators chime in and say, yes, we'll just go ahead and fork the damn thing, which is what it looks like we're going to, that means it's going to fork. And if you looked at the proposal, and the proposal is on their site at agora.terra.money, the top proposal there is coming from Do Kwon Idiot. And you notice he already has dates plugged in there for exactly when certain things are going to happen. They already have the new fork ready to go. And I want people to understand what that's saying. They already knew they were going to do a fork. They were already planning to do a fork because they already knew that the vast majority of the large wallet holders were going to skew the vote in favor of the fork. It means that it didn't matter that there's a governance in the first place because it doesn't matter about the voices of the majority holders. It matters about the voices of the largest holders. That's the flaw in the way they have the governance set up. The governance is not that you go in there and each person has a single vote. The governance is it's based on how many tokens you've staked in there. You might have a lot of people who never staked any tokens. They're not getting any vote weighting, number one. Two, even if you do have tokens staked, remember, this guy had a peak price well over $100 per coin. Very few people were holding more than a couple 100,000 at a stretch, and I'm stretching the number. So in order for people to have been holding millions of the tokens, you're talking some major whale money there. And the whales are able to influence to force the fork. The fork was always inevitable because they knew that was what's going to happen. That means the governance doesn't do you any good. So when they say that the new Terra, not the classic, but the new one, is going to be basically a community token, they're saying that they're removing the governance out of the equation. They're saying that this alliance, their wallet's not going to be part of it, and it's going to be all about the community. Think of what that's saying to you. That's saying that ultimately you guys are on your own with this, and you'll get this new token, but we're not going to give you your full value of your coins that you have now. You're just on your own as a new thing, and you can run it as a community, and we're out of it, and there's no more governance, but it's already too late. Because in the forking method, everybody who's an existing holder is still subject to a vesting. It's just a little bit more money to them, but they're still subject to the vesting. Anybody who bought the dip after it crashed is getting like 15% upfront, and then you got to wait 2 years before you see any value. That's assuming it's going to go up in value, meaning your value is locked somewhere outside of your control. And if the coin tanks, you'll be left with no value. There's lawsuits pending against this Do Kwon Idiot because you're taking money from people and the governance isn't really doing its job because there's nothing that any individual can do to stop it from happening. You're just sitting back watching as your money is being decided by other people who are already wealthy, who don't have the same risk, who don't really care as much about you or your wealth. Remember, for some of these people, they're just doing whatever they're just doing whatever they want to do. So I'm saying, as just an informational service, because a couple people talking about it, and I wanted to share, at the end of the day, you've got this situation where they knew the fork was going to go forward. They knew that the fork was going to happen because of the way the governance worked. And since the governance, it was built to support that, you can still vote for the burn. It's there. I gave the link. Find us on Twitter at CTR Crypto Radio, and you can vote on it. I'm saying that they blacklisted that for a reason. They hid it from you because it should be showing on the main page at station.terra.money. The reason it's not is because they don't want you to even think about the burn as an option. They already decided they're going to go forward with the fork method more than likely. The only way at this point that anything could change would be somebody on a government level getting involved and intervening, saying, I know you got your governance, dude, but guess what? We're saying that's not going to fly, brother, and you are going to pay these people back. I don't think that's going to happen, but South Korea is trying. They're trying. Whether they're going to succeed, who knows? Because fundamentally, he didn't do anything against the law unless they can somehow prove. If he somehow took money from somebody high-powered in government, he's going to jail. If nobody in government's affected by this, they're not going to do anything. They'll talk a good game. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors and all that stuff. It's okay. But you as a low-level investor, I just want to put out, if you look at station.terra.money and the fact that the only proposal up for vote is the fork, and the fact that the validators have the vast majority of ability to sway that vote, and the fact that you have to stake your tokens, which the majority wouldn't have done, and the fact that the ones who really would stake are your wealthy ones, it tells you that everything was skewed to do the fork from the get-go. That's why he has a plan. That's why he has dates known. He already knew. Chances are he had conversations with the validators saying, when we do this, because these low levels are not going to win. When we do this, let's put some dates on that. Let's go ahead and start building out the new fork and get ready to do this. So let's assume that I'm telling the truth, and let's assume that I'm correct, and let's assume I'm not just fudding, right? If the fork goes through, what's our analogy? Our analogy is Ethereum. Ethereum launches. It has the DAO that gets hacked on the staking, does to do the fork to Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. Ethereum skyrockets, Ethereum Classic. Initially, it was low, and arguably it did skyrocket relative to where it was, but then it settled back down, and it was never got to anywhere close to what the main Ethereum was able to do. I don't think that would happen with Luna. I argue the opposite would happen with Luna, and I'll tell you why. It comes to one word: sentiment. I argue, this is my theory, and I want people to hold me accountable if I get it wrong. I argue that if they win, they do the fork, and you end up with a Terra Classic, Luna Classic, and you end up with this new Terra fork that won't have a UST, apparently I'm hearing. I argue that that new one is going to struggle to succeed. I argue that the Classic is going to maintain a momentum back up. I argue that people are going to want to sustain it. I argue that the new one is going to struggle to gain community traction as a community project. I argue that Do Kwon's reputation is in the crapper and will likely never recover. Because remember, he also was involved with, apparently, what is that, basis money or whatever that crap is. So it's not like he didn't have a track record of this thing. I argue that this is going to shift sentiment of the investor population, because all it does is verify what I've said all along. These people that are the wealthy people, the top people with the money, they don't care about you. They don't care about the project. They care about themselves. That's why I always say, don't have unrealistic loyalty to any one project, and certainly don't YOLO in any one project. Because sometimes, as the song says, sometimes these hoes aren't loyal. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a push of an agenda that was already decided long before it became a topic. The shutting down of the whatever labs before this became an issue means they had to know it was going to be going down. There were things that were known as far back as April and possibly before then to say, we're going to hit this point. It's a sinking ship. We're going to start shutting stuff down. We're going to try to go to Singapore or whatever. They had to know that it was going to go down. They're somewhat protected by the lack of true regulation around cryptocurrency. So now let's talk about the other net effect. There's calls now again to start adding regulation and locking down. Janet Yellen just went on the air talking all this garbage about locking stuff down. I got it. I understand why she's saying that. In some ways, I agree we need regulation. I simply said we need smart regulation, not stupid regulation. And yes, we should regulate stable coins. Absolutely. But the regulation in this one is not even about the cryptocurrency. The regulation is that you should not have a guy like this idiot being able to arbitrarily make decisions that influence people's investments. The governance is broken on its face. It should have been one wallet, one vote, because we know that there are whales out there, because we know that there are high power people like a Citadel and a BlackRock out there, because we know Do Kwon has a wallet, because we know that exchanges have wallets, because we know it's already slanted against a low-level investor. It should always have been one wallet, one vote. Guaranteed. They knew that. They knew that because it's not one wallet, one vote, there's no way they can lose. Imagine a poker game where you can never lose because you control every aspect of the game. You control what deck you use. You control how many aces are in that deck. You control what cards I gave you. You can never beat the house. That's what you have with their governance structure. Well, why would you ever want that kind of a governance structure? Because it had to be known that they really needed to pull that joker one day. and do what we're doing now. You can call me tinfoil all you care to. That's cool. But as a former auditor myself, I look at pattern of behavior. Pattern of behavior, the guy was involved with a project before that did something very similar and failed for a very similar reason. Then we get into an unsustainable algorithmic, and people say the algorithm would have worked if it hadn't been for this illicit deal with the Bitcoin. And then there's the question of where the Bitcoin went. That's fine, but the point is he was allowed to do all that. He was empowered to do all that with your money. Why was he empowered to do that? That's where I think we need regulation, that no one person should have the authority to act with your money without approving it through you, and the governance that we see isn't solving the problem because the government is defined by them. They determine what the governance is going to be. How can that be equitable when you're just going to rig it in your favor? It's something to think about. I also did a coverage on our Casual Talk Radio show because I wanted to alert people over there who don't talk crypto, but they talk investments and finance, because I speculated that this situation might affect the regular stock market, might affect the larger economy, because again, as people are dumping other cryptos to try to keep up with it, and that's being harmed, people might have other cryptos in their portfolio. And some of these businesses that you might have stock with are using these other cryptos as part of their portfolio. And so they're harmed. And so then they bleed it as well. Something to think about. If you have other investments, I'll share it here too. If you have other investments, if you're a diverse portfolio and you've done other stuff, you got to make sure that you're keeping an eye on both sides of the puzzle, because although this is one project, I believe it's broad reaching. I believe it's going to have ramifications and a ripple effect that go outside the crypto bubble. And I don't know that we appreciate how far it's going to go yet until we get there. We're already seeing that USD Tether is a little bit precarious, and it's always been sketchy in terms of the backing with the US dollar and whether or not it truly had a sufficient peg. That was always an open question. With the amount of dumping that happened, we recently saw that it was somewhat a little bit concerned. The Coinbase CEO came out and said, well, if we file bankruptcy, you might lose your money. I can't call him a liar. It's true. But it goes to why I say don't leave your money in exchanges either, because you can't even trust them. So here's my call to action for anybody listening to my show. And listen, there's going to be people on YouTube who emphatically disagree with everything I just said, who say I'm just a fudder and I don't know what the hell, I almost cussed. Heck, I'm talking about, and it's just whatever. That's great. I'm telling you what I think, my opinion. Keep an eye on your cryptocurrency. Keep an eye on the graph and the current state, market view, trading view, whatever tool you use. Keep an eye on the state of all cryptos. Your Bitcoins, Ethereums, AVAX, all of them. Keep an eye on it and look for hints as to what may be happening as fallout from this, because I suspect in the month of June, you're going to see a little bit more turmoil that we normally wouldn't have seen, because if they win, they go forward with this fork, there's going to be some money that's flowing and you want to keep an eye on it, but also your regular stocks, your 401ks, your IRAs, anything that's not a bond, basically, anything that's a regular investment subject to fluctuation, even if it's not crypto related. Keep an eye on all of it. Build some dashboard that you can watch all this stuff and just keep your eye on the movement of things and just kind of make smart decisions. Try to resist the temptation to just FOMO sell if your stocks are going down. Like I saw Target was having issues, and I saw Bitcoin was going back down again, and I saw other stocks having problems. I believe it's going to be tumultuous when it shouldn't be. And I believe that some of this is triggered by this Terra nonsense. And I don't think that we're going to learn our lesson, because I think we're going to try to regulate the wrong thing. I don't believe it's regulation of the cryptocurrency. I believe it's regulation to prevent guys like this idiot from taking unilateral action with other people's money. I saw the SEC, I'll close by saying I saw the SEC come out and say, you need to treat people's investments as though it's your own capital, but you also need to involve them who gave you that money as if it was an investment, because that's what it is. And that's correct. They're not treating it like it's borrowed money, because essentially it's borrowed money. They're spending it and using it as if it's their asset, and it's not an asset yet. It's borrowed money because we all, whoever's invested, when I say we all, expect a return. We expect some return. Otherwise, why would anybody give any money to you guys? Any project, I don't care. I watch now the graphs, and I'm watching things like Libero. Libero it's below the pre-sale price, which for me is great, but it's below the pre-sale. Seifu is rock bottom. It's getting beat up like crazy. Titano's rock bottom. Kiba's rock bottom. Everrise is not rock bottom, but it's pretty dang low. Almost everything is pretty low except for the stable coins or the wrapped coins that are tied to something that's a little bit stable. It shouldn't be that way for this long of a period of time, and it seemed like it got progressively worse, all tied around the decline of Bitcoin, which I argue is tied to this Terra situation. And mind you, we never answered the question, what happened to all the Bitcoin that apparently was supposed to show up, the 80,000 or some odd, and it was never got an answer. So when you think this Do Kwon idiot doesn't seem inclined to answer your questions, tells devs to blacklist a proposal that just contradicts what he wants to do, and just muscles forward even when CZ Binance tells him that your fork ain't going to solve the problem, dude, when he completely and blatantly ignores every single bit of advice told. The lesson learned on the Ethereum split, the people involved regretted doing the split. They regretted doing the fork because they knew ultimately they should have just fixed it and dealt with it, ripped the bandage off, dealt with the pain temporarily, and just rebuilt from scratch because it harmed investor sentiment. Although Ethereum was able to go on and excel and succeed, you left a bunch of people behind and you ultimately disrupted operations because now Ethereum Classic, it's staying proof of work. They said they're staying proof of work, which contradicts where we're trying to go for proof of stake. And the proof of work gets attacked by the government, which means now you have this disruption coming up again. All because these guys made a decision that was poorly thought out because all they care about is that let's just walk away from this and move on. Same as with the stock split. It never fixes. It never makes things better. It only makes things worse when you do that. That's why reverse splits are looked down upon in the stock market side for the same exact reason. So anyway, I don't have any advice to give anybody other than keep an eye on both sides. Keep an eye on the cryptocurrency side, all of them. Bitcoin, I don't care if you even invest in it. Keep an eye on all of it because I believe you're going to start seeing that there's broad reaching impacts and a ripple effect across the stock side triggered partially by this Terra Luna situation and Bitcoin's impacts that we're seeing now. I believe you're still seeing more sells that we're just not really aware of. There's always the routine sells and there's always buys, but the fact that it's staying in the red, it means something else is going on. And always remember, if it's factually accurate that Citadel and BlackRock are in the middle of this, it means that they're taking the housing market and they're taking this cryptocurrency space, at least to this degree, this scope of it. And that means that nothing can stop these guys. And you can try to get to true descent all you care to, but because we're so dependent on Bitcoin as the backing funding source, you're never going to get away from them being able to get in the mix because you can't stop them from investing. All we can do is make sure governance is true governance, which is one wallet, one vote, to take away the power of whales, to influence votes, to support an agenda, as you're seeing here with this business. So if you want to go to this burn one and submit your vote, you have some staked coins, and as a result, you want to submit to the burn to help it out and see if it makes a difference. Find me on Twitter at CTR Crypto Radio. I shared it out through my account there, and you can hit that link. You can add your wallet. Again, your tokens have to be staked in order for it to recognize your vote. And the number of votes that you see on there is based on how much you stake. I also think they're blocking anybody who bought in off the dip. I think they're only counting people who were holders before this fiasco started. That's my theory. I don't have a stake in it, so I can't say. Also, if your coins are in the exchange, there's nothing you can do. And I would argue the vast majority of people in this have their coins in the exchange, not in a wallet. So they're not part of this. They can't give a dissenting vote. Remember, a lot of the exchanges shut down withdrawals. Now, who do you think asked them to shut down withdrawals? Call me tinfoil if you want, man. I'm just calling it like I see it. As a former auditor, there's a lot of smoke behind this one. And it's sad. It's really sad because nobody's going to come out better in this deal other than maybe Citadel, BlackRock, and the validators. And even the validators probably won't. I had an argument with one of them where I said, I don't know why you want the fork, because if you do the burn, it's going to trigger FOMO. Right now, the only thing getting you paid is the FOMO off the potential of a burn. If you do a burn and you announce you're doing that, the FOMO is going to triple. So you're going to get paid more fees. Why would you ever want to stop that? And he didn't have an answer. Of course not, because these people don't think. They're thinking about the wrong thing, which is right now, I'm not getting paid what I want. I got you, but going to the fork is not going to get you what you want either. It's not solving the problem. All you're doing is putting a hat on a hat. The burn triggers activities, and there's enough. There was almost $1 trillion in volume on this damn thing. You could easily have fixed it, easily, just off community, outreach, messaging. You think about all the shilling that SHIB does, all the shilling that Satama does, all the shilling that all these meme coins do, and they can barely crack an egg, but yet this one, which didn't have support of leadership to market it, gets almost $1 trillion in volume without community outreach. And then all this idiot has to do is say, look, if you want to save this, help us save it, buy a little bit to help us get the price back up. We are going to implement a little bit of a fee, but it should be small. And if you really want to save this, let's see what we can do with this. And let's see if we can run with it. Meanwhile, we're going to increase the burn to offset, because they still have the minting on. And many people didn't know that. The minting's still on, which means the burn's not able to deal with enough to keep up, which is the reason that they're quitting and going with this stuff over here, because they're not brave enough to just take the risk of, you know what, we got to rip the bandage off on this and let it rebuild on its own. That's not community, folks. Community is we're listening to the voice of the majority when they're telling us this is what we want, and we think we can make this work, and we think we could drum up enough support. This has support outside of the existing holder pool. This has support outside of cryptocurrency, because everybody believes that there's an opportunity to not only rebuild it, but make it stronger and possibly turn it into the next Ethereum, not the next Ethereum Classic. Anyhow, folks, that's all I got. I want to thank you. If you listened live this long, I know it's a problem. It's a big problem. I don't know where we go from here. I don't know what's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's going to end up a fork, but I'm saying I don't know what we go from here. But I hope my plea, my impassioned plea, I'll say this on Twitter too. I would like everybody to simply speak out and say, when you go forward with this and we see that it craps, at some point you got to be held accountable for the losses people are going to incur. And we don't want to hear, quote, the pain my invention caused you guys. It's, I messed up. I need to step down because it's clear that I'm not equipped to do this. And then ideally turn yourself into some authority to answer hard questions. Because if this was the bank, that guy would be in jail by now. In what happened to people's funds. It's crypto, so nothing happens. We can help change that part at least. I don't agree the answer is to change cryptocurrency. I think we need to deal with idiots like this and take away their power and get back to the point where ultimately investors are their boss. They don't act if we don't tell them what to do. And until we get there, we're going to see more of this. It's going to happen again. I guarantee it's going to happen again. I believe Maker even had an issue at some point. DAI had an issue. DAO had an issue. Ethereum had an issue. They all have issues. So I'm not isolating that this is exclusive or unique or whatever, but I'm saying that we should have regulations to stop the people involved that are causing this kind of chaos from happening in the first place. All right, folks, I'm going offline now so I can go and get something to eat because it's kind of late. See ya.